Today we're going to take a deeper dive into interpersonal communication, the study of how we connect, how we build, and how sometimes we even lose relationships. Up until this point, we've looked at some of the basics of communication, but now we're shifting our focus to the theories that help us explain and predict human behavior in relationships. You see, the reality is this: relationships don't just happen by chance. They follow patterns. They're shaped by needs, by perception, by attraction, and by the way we communicate every single day. Scholars have spent decades developing theories that explain why we're drawn to certain people, how we decide to open up to them, and what makes our relationships either thrive or fail. In this lecture, we'll examine 10 different communication theories that help us make sense of all of this. Some of these theories focus on the very beginning of relationships, like why we notice certain people or how we reduce uncertainty when meeting someone new. Others explain how relationships deepen, how we manage tensions once we're close, and how fairness and imbalance can influence our satisfaction. We'll also look at how technology has changed the ways that we connect, creating new categories of relationships that didn't exist even a generation ago. By the end of this lecture, you'll see that communication isn't just a part of all of our relationships, but that it defines them. These theories will give you a framework for understanding your own interactions and the connections that you build with others, whether it's family, friends, co-workers, or your romantic partners. Relationships aren't optional. They are essential to being human. Thrive when we feel accepted, when we feel valued, and when we feel connected to others. Relationships also give us social support, and this comes in a few different forms. Now, emotional support is having someone who listens and validates your feelings. Informational support is advice, feedback, or perspective that can help you solve problems. And instrumental support, well, that is tangible help when someone gives you a ride, when they help you move, or they bring you food when you're sick. Beyond meeting our needs, strong relationships also provide us real health benefits. Research shows that people with meaningful social ties live longer, they handle stress more effectively, and recover faster from illness. On the other hand, loneliness is linked to higher levels of anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. Finally, relationships are where we develop our identity. We learn who we are through the feedback and reflection of others, through friendships, family, and partners who shape how we see ourselves. In short, relationships don't just make life better, they make life possible. What you're looking at here, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Maslow was an American psychologist, and he developed this hierarchy of needs, which is a model that explains human motivation. What are the things that motivate us as individuals? Now, the hierarchy is often shown as a pyramid, and it has 5 levels. And you see it starts at the bottom with physiological needs, and it goes all the way up to self-actualization. What he theorized was that in order for us to become a self-actualized individual, that would be us operating at our very best. In order to reach that top of the pyramid, we have to have all of the elements below it satisfied. And that's why at the very bottom you see physiological needs. That's things like food, water, and sleep. Without those, you're not going to have any of the other elements above it. And we also need security. We need to feel stable in our lives. If those 2 conditions are met, then we can look at things like love and belonging. And this is where we have our friendships. This is where we have our romantic relationships, intimacy, family, a sense of community. So Maslow argued that until this need is met, people struggle to reach higher levels like self-esteem or personal growth. So if we apply that to friendships, it says that friendships aren't just extra things in our lives, that they are a core human need. We need friendships in order to become a self-actualized individual. So in Maslow's model, friendship isn't optional. It's one of the building blocks of a healthy, successful life. The first theory that we're going to look at is the need to belong theory. And this was developed by Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary. And they argued that the desire for relationships, well, it isn't just a preference. It's a basic human motivation. We crave frequent, positive interactions with others, and we want those interactions to take place in the context of stable, long-term relationships. You see, a quick chat with a stranger, that isn't enough to satisfy our need to belong. We want bonds that endure, where we feel safe, valued, and cared for, over the long term. This theory reinforces Maslow's idea that belonging isn't optional. It is as fundamental as food and shelter. You see, our drive to form and to sustain relationships is part of what makes us human. Now, how does the need to belong theory apply directly to you as a student? Well, you'll see that making and maintaining friends is often at the center of your college experience. When students feel included in peer groups, they report less stress, more confidence, and a greater sense of belonging on campus. On the flip side, if a student feels socially excluded, that can lead to loneliness and academic disengagement. Social media and digital belonging, the use of technology, has complicated this a bit. You see, you guys know this. Today, belonging isn't just face-to-face conversations or face-to-face relationships. Many students find connection through social media. Not just students, people in general. And whether it's getting likes on a post or staying active in a group chat or feeling part of an online community. On our classroom and campus communities, even in academic settings, belonging matters. Students who feel seen by their professors and students who feel connected to their classmates show time and time again that they're more motivated, they're more engaged, and, well, they're more likely to persist in college. Something as simple as me knowing a student's name, or a classmate inviting another student to join a study group or be a part of an online conversation can satisfy that fundamental need to belong. Now, Michael Raby, he expanded our understanding of relationships in the digital age. He pointed out that we can't just think about face-to-face communication anymore. We also have to consider how electronic communication impacts our relationships. So he identified 4 types of relationships, primarily face-to-face. These relationships are rooted in our in-person context, so family and close friends. Then he has primarily electronic relationships, and they exist mainly online. These could be long-distance friendships or online communities. And then we have high face-to-face / high electronic relationships, and just think of these as mixed, where constant texting and in-person time can enhance your relationships. This is common among college students and their close peers. And last, he has low face-to-face / low electronic relationships, and these would be our weak ties. These would be more acquaintances, people that we rarely see face-to-face or rarely message electronically. And lastly, Raby also identified 4 categories of how relationships move between offline and online. He describes virtual relationships, and these relationships exist entirely online. You never meet these people face to face or have any real-world interaction with them. Then he has what he calls the Pinocchio relationship, and these start online, but they eventually move into the real world. And then there's cyber immigrant relationships, and these relationships begin face-to-face, but then after time they shift online, often because of distance. Think about friends or colleagues who move away. Those might have been face-to-face relationships in the beginning. And lastly, he has real-worlders, and these are people who stay exclusively face-to-face with little or no digital contact. Now, these are common in relationships where digital contact feels unnecessary, for example, with elderly relatives or maybe neighbors. Now, an important check-in here is, again, the reminder that communication defines our relationships. It is the beginning of all relationships. It is what we then use to maintain our relationships, and the lack of communication is what often ends our relationships. Technology does change our relationships, so Raby's model showed us that electronic versus face-to-face communication can alter bonds. Healthy relationships, though, well, they require intention, and we must balance our digital and face-to-face communication in a successful relationship. We need to practice empathy, clarity, and active listening, and also recognize that communication is the lifeblood of our relationships. Now, most relationships begin with interpersonal attraction, and this is the force that draws us towards others. Attraction doesn't always mean romance. It simply explains why we choose to invest in one person over another. Now, researchers have identified 3 forms of attraction. Physical attraction is being drawn to someone's appearance. A smile, their eyes, or the way they carry themselves. They got riz. Social attraction is being drawn to someone's personality, kindness, humor, or confidence. And task attraction is being drawn to someone's abilities or their dependability. You see a reliable classmate or a talented coworker. Those are people that you admire for a skill set or for the fact that they're dependable. They're always there for you when you need them. Attraction is also influenced by four classic factors. Appearance plays a role in our first impressions, and it's often linked to the halo effect. And we'll examine the halo effect when we look at romantic relationships, but it's the idea that people that we find physically attractive, we give them more grace. We overlook more of their flaws because we find them attractive, hence the halo effect. It suggests that attractive people are good people, and as we know from our prior lived experiences, that is not always true. Now, proximity is probably the most important aspect here, and proximity is just the physical space, the physical distance between us and someone else. So simply being near someone, well, that increases the chance of liking them, and that's called the mere exposure effect. The more we are around people, the more we are drawn to or attracted to those people. Similarity draws us to people who share our interests, our hobbies, our values, and maybe even our sense of humor. And complementarity means that we sometimes seek out people whose differences balance us out a little bit. Like someone who is really detail-oriented and loves to plan everything may be attracted to someone who is a little bit more spontaneous because it exposes them to something new in their life. Together, these forces explain why certain people stand out to us and why relationships often start in very predictable ways. Uncertainty reduction explains what happens when we meet someone for the very first time. You see, new people or strangers create uncertainty, and because uncertainty makes us feel uncomfortable, well, we're motivated to reduce it. So we do it in one of three ways. We can use a passive strategy, and this is where we observe people without direct interaction. So you might watch how someone behaves in class or a social setting, but you're going to do that from a distance. You're just watching. Then we could employ an active strategy, and this is asking other people about them. Hey, do you know anything about Rick? Is he a friendly person? How is he with XYZ? And so we seek out information about people from others. And the last strategy is interactive, and this is where you don't watch them from a distance and you don't ask other people about them. You go straight to that person and you directly engage. You introduce yourselves, you ask questions to get the information that you need to make yourself feel more comfortable about that person. You see, the goal of reducing uncertainty is to predict behavior and to know whether or not that person is someone that you want to continue building a relationship with. Social penetration theory is also called the onion theory, and we're going to talk about this in more depth when we look at intimate relationships. But it compares relationship growth essentially to peeling an onion. It says that we have layers. And when we first meet someone, we share surface level information. That could be your name, your hobbies, small talk, like what are you studying? What classes are you taking? Where are you from? What kind of music do you listen to? As trust builds over time, we move into deeper personal details. So if you can imagine an onion, you're peeling back the layers of someone over time. You may get to know their hopes, their fears, their experiences, more personal information that they share about their life. And the most intimate relationships, well, they reach the core, and that's the very private feelings and vulnerabilities that we have deep inside of us that we only share with a very select few individuals. You see, closeness depends on both the breadth of the topics that we talk about and the depth of how personal those conversations get. The more we peel away layers, the closer the relationship becomes. And we do that through disclosure, but through what we call the reciprocity of disclosure, which just means when I disclose or I share and talk about certain aspects of my life, you also share and exchange the same information about your life. And we tend to do that on the same level. So if I say my favorite color is blue, that's a very surface level self-disclosure, and you're going to reply with, oh, cool, I love blue too, or my favorite color is orange. If I were to say my favorite color is blue, and you say, I love hamburgers, well, that would be a little bit of an odd response, you see, because we reciprocate our communication at the same level. We also have relational dialectics theory, and this theory says that relationships actually aren't that stable and that they create stress in our life. They're full of these contradictory tensions that we constantly seek to manage. One of those is autonomy versus connection, and that just simply means that we want closeness with other people. It's a core desire that we talked about earlier, but we also really like our independence, and so we're always trying to balance this need of having people close to us in our lives, but also maintaining that sense of independence and freedom. We also have openness versus privacy, meaning we want to share information about ourselves, but there may also be parts of ourselves that we just want to protect because we don't want to get hurt. Maybe you've opened up and you've shared with someone in the past and that person has used that information against you, or they've hurt you in a way that led to that friendship or relationship ending. So we're always balancing this sense of openness versus privacy. We also have predictability versus novelty. You see, we really enjoy routines. We like things to be predictable in our lives, but yet there's also a part of us that craves excitement and surprise, so we're always trying to balance that out. You see, healthy relationships don't solve these tensions once for all. They navigate them over time, and they balance back and forth depending upon the situation. Now, attachment theory is an interesting one, and this suggests that the way that we bonded with caregivers in our childhood, well, that goes on to influence how we connect with other people when we become adults. When you're a baby, you depend on adults like your parents for food, comfort, and for safety. How those adults treat you, whether they're reliable, loving, or distant, can shape the way that you learn to trust other people. That early pattern becomes a style of attachment that you then carry into other relationships as you grow up. Now, there's 4 main attachment styles. Secure attachment is where you feel safe with people. You trust that they'll be there for you, that you can be close to them without being afraid that that person is going to hurt you or that they're going to leave. Then we have anxious attachment, and anxious attachment is where we worry that people will leave us. So we might get clingy or need constant reassurances from that person, and that can place stress on a relationship. For example, you text your friend 20 times if they don't reply fast enough because you think they're mad at you or that they just don't care. Then we have avoidant attachment, and this is where you act like, well, you don't need anybody else in life. These are people who were forced to be very independent as kids. They took care of themselves or they took care of their siblings. And so they might keep people at a distance because they don't want to get hurt. For example, you might say, I don't care, when actually you do care, but you don't want to look vulnerable. So it matters because it influences our friendships, our dating, and even how we act in groups. The good news is, well, your style, it isn't set in stone. So healthy relationships and self-awareness can help us grow more secure over time. You see, people can come into our lives that help break those patterns of attachment that we had when we were kids. So think of attachment as just the default setting for relationships that you downloaded as a kid. But just like an app, you can get updates as you learn and experience new things. Next, we have expectancy violations theory. We all carry expectations about how other people should act in conversations, things like personal space, the tone of voice that they use with us, eye contact, or self-disclosure. When those expectations are violated, it grabs our attention. And the reaction isn't always negative. It depends on the violation and the relationship. So an example here would be a friend gives you an unexpected hug. Well, that might actually make you feel warm, welcome, respected, loved. But if a stranger came up to you on the street and they hugged you, well, that would probably make you feel uncomfortable. So you see, it depends upon the violation and the relationship. Our interpretation of expectancy violations depends also on the context and how we view the person who violated the expectation. Social exchange theory looks at relationships like this mental balance sheet. We weigh the rewards that we get. Those rewards could be love, support, companionship, and we weigh those against the cost. Think about what it costs you to be friends with someone. A friendship takes time that you could spend doing something else, maybe something rewarding by yourself or with other people. It requires an emotional investment, and particularly when your friend is in need of your support. There can be material costs associated with doing things together, such as the expenses you incur in taking road trips or going out to dinner or concerts. Friendships often also require physical investments as well. You may not want to help your friend move into their new apartment, but you do it anyway because they're your friend. Now, much of the time we decide that the benefits of friendship are well worth the cost. Some social relationships, however, eventually reach the point where the cost of staying in those relationships outweighs the benefits. Equity theory argues that healthy relationships are built on fairness and balance, that we feel most satisfied when what we put into a relationship matches what we get back. Now, this doesn't mean that everything is perfectly equal. You see, one person might cook while another person cleans. One friend might offer you advice while another friend offers you a ride to work or school. What matters is that both people feel the exchange is fair. Problems arise when that balance is off. You see, if you're the under-benefited partner, you're going to feel resentful because you're giving more than what you're receiving. If you're the over-benefited partner, you may feel guilty because, well, quite honestly, you know that the other person is doing more work and that they're putting more into it. When relationships feel equitable, they tend to last and feel more rewarding. When they don't, dissatisfaction often follows. You see, equity, in short, well, it's the glue of fairness. As we wrap up today's lecture, I want you to think about this. Relationships just don't happen. They're built, they're maintained, and sometimes even ended through communication. The theories we've explored today help us see those patterns more closely. We started with the basics of perception, attraction, and the human need to belong. We looked at how relationships form, how they deepen through disclosure, how they are shaped by fairness and cost-benefit analysis, and how technology can create new types of connections. We saw that relationships are full of tensions, expectations, and attachment patterns from our childhood constantly influence how we interact as adults. Together, these 10 theories remind us that communication isn't just something we do within relationships. It's the very process that creates and defines them. Understanding these frameworks doesn't just help you as a student. It will make you a better friend, a better partner, a coworker, and a better family member. So as you leave this lecture, reflect on your own relationships. Where do you see these theories at work in your own life? And how can awareness of them help you communicate more intentionally, more empathetically, and more effectively? Strong communication leads to strong relationships, and strong relationships lead to a better life.